Hello. Today I want to share my story honestly, calmly, and without pretending to be stronger than I am. This is a story about how my life changed because of agoraphobia, the fear of crowded places, open spaces, and situations where escape feels impossible. But more importantly, it's a story about trying to understand myself, discovering where this fear comes from, and learning that you don't have to deal with mental health struggles alone. My first serious panic episode happened on a completely ordinary day. I had gone downtown to run some errands, nothing special. I took the subway, got off at a busy station, and as soon as I stepped into the main hallway, everything around me suddenly shifted. There were way too many people. Heads, voices, footsteps, all blending together into this overwhelming noise. The crowd moved like a giant wave, and I felt like I was standing in the middle of something powerful and uncontrollable. It was as if I had stepped into a human-sized beehive. At first, I tried to tell myself that I was just tired, that it would pass. But then my breathing changed. It got tight, shallow, almost painful. My chest felt squeezed, my heart was pounding, and panic washed over me instantly without warning. It didn't matter that people around me weren't paying attention to me. My brain reacted like I was in danger. I realized that if I didn't get out of that crowd immediately, I would completely lose control. So I rushed into the nearest store just to escape. I stood between the aisles trying to catch my breath. At the time, I thought it was just a random breakdown, maybe stress. But on the ride home, I already knew something was very wrong. I had to take an Uber because the idea of getting back on public transportation made my anxiety spike again. The next morning, I felt a little better, but some deep, invisible tension stayed with me, like a reminder that this could happen again. And it did. At first, the episodes happened every few weeks, but slowly they became more frequent. By 2018, agoraphobia wasn't just a problem, it was part of my daily life. Panic attacks hit me several times a month, sometimes several times a week, and the scariest part was losing the ability to control my reactions. Work became difficult. I constantly thought about how to arrange my desk so people wouldn't stand too close. I took a step back whenever someone approached me, not because of them, but because my body reacted instantly. Tension, fear, an urge to escape. It's almost impossible to explain to your coworkers why you suddenly freeze or step away. They see normal behavior. They don't see the storm inside you. Public transportation became a nightmare. I avoided buses and trains and relied on smaller ride shares or shuttles because fewer people meant I had a better chance of staying calm. But even one accidental touch, someone brushing past my shoulder, could trigger panic. It felt like being a cup filled to the brim, and that touch was the last drop spilling everything over. More than once, I had to get off the bus halfway to work, crying silently and trying not to fall apart in front of strangers. I wasn't just afraid of the panic attack itself, I was afraid of people seeing me lose control, of their confusion or judgment. One of the most painful episodes happened right on a city sidewalk while I was with someone close to me. The panic hit out of nowhere. I expected him to pull away or panic himself. Instead, he just hugged me, held me tightly, shielding me from everything around us. For the first time in a long while, I felt safe, more protected than by any medication. But even that didn't stop the panic attacks entirely. They kept returning, and eventually I understood. I couldn't keep living like this. I needed help. I went to a doctor. We talked for a long time. I completed multiple assessments, and eventually he gave me a diagnosis: agoraphobia, accompanied by depressive episodes and symptoms of bipolar disorder. Hearing this was overwhelming, but it also felt like the truth. Something I could finally work with instead of guessing. I was prescribed therapy, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety medication. But the most important thing the doctor told me was this: agoraphobia doesn't disappear overnight. You can't simply turn it off, but you can learn to manage it, to quiet it, to live a life that doesn't revolve around fear. And then came the hardest question. Why? Why me? Why now? Why like this? When we started to explore the possible roots of my anxiety, I discovered something surprising. The cause ran much deeper than I had ever expected. When my therapist and I began exploring the roots of my anxiety, it became clear that almost everything we struggle with emotionally as adults has deep connections to childhood. That's not just a cliché, it's a psychological reality. Our fears, our triggers, our ways of reacting to stress are often shaped long before we have the ability to protect ourselves or even understand what's happening. And the body remembers trauma far more vividly and far longer than the mind. When I tried to recall the first time I ever felt afraid of crowds or uneasy around groups of people, my memory pulled me straight back into my school years. Not to academics or friendships, those were barely present, but to the constant feeling of being painfully alone. I wasn't part of any group. I wasn't included. I was the kid who always ended up on the outside. I was in many ways an easy target. Kids can be incredibly cruel when they sense someone's vulnerability. And with me, they sensed it instantly. During recess, girls would gang up on me, pulling my hair, grabbing my clothes, pushing me around. Sometimes there wasn't even a reason. Sometimes someone would say, "Let's go mess with her." And that was enough. I didn't fight back. I didn't know how. I would cry, I would get scared, and that only made it worse. For some kids, seeing that reaction was like fuel. It made them try harder. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, your brain makes a decision for you. Crowds are dangerous, people can hurt you, and blending in doesn't guarantee safety. Even years later, the body still reacts as if it's trapped in that same childhood environment. My therapist explained that childhood bullying, chronic stress, or ongoing emotional isolation can lead to anxiety disorders like agoraphobia later in life. Hearing that was both painful and relieving. Painful because the wounds were still there, relieving because it finally made sense. As part of my treatment, we used art therapy. I was asked to draw what I felt during panic episodes. At first, I didn't understand how this could help, but then I started noticing a pattern. Every drawing was almost entirely black, heavy, closed off, like the world was pressing in from all sides. And then one day, about a year later, I brought in a drawing that looked different without me even realizing it. It wasn't cheerful, but there were gray tones, a bit of muted red, softer lines, more space. My therapist looked at it and said, "This is progress. This means your mind is opening up again." And for the first time in a long time, I felt a small shift, a sense that something inside me was slowly healing. But the path forward was still uneven. Some days felt like steps back. One incident happened on a crowded bus. A man accidentally stepped on my foot and bumped into me. Something so minor, but for me, it was like a switch flipped. My heartbeat surged, my vision blurred, I felt trapped. I didn't even realize I'd raised my voice until I saw people staring. Then the shame hit. I stood there quietly crying, counting the stops, just trying to make it to the door. This is what people often fail to understand. You cannot willpower your way out of a panic attack. You can't calm down just because someone tells you to. Anxiety in moments like that isn't a thought, it's a physical reaction. Fast, automatic, overwhelming, more like a reflex than a choice. As I tried to open up about my mental health, I encountered two very different responses. Some people were supportive, but others reacted with confusion, judgment, or outdated beliefs. Comments like, "Just breathe and relax," "You don't need therapy," "Stop overthinking," or "You should handle your problems by yourself" became painfully familiar. There's still a stigma around therapy, medication, and mental health support, even in a country where mental health conversations are becoming more open. Many people still believe seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist means something is wrong with you. But the truth is simple. The brain is an organ like any other. If it needs help, support, or treatment, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you responsible. I'm sharing my story today not because I want pity or sympathy. I'm sharing it because I know how isolating anxiety disorders can feel. I know how scary it is to think you're the only one going through this. And I want someone out there, maybe someone silently struggling, to hear this. You're not alone. You're not broken. You don't have to manage everything by yourself. At the same time, I'm careful about who I share this with in my personal life. Not because I'm ashamed, but because many people still don't understand mental health. They may judge, misunderstand, or reduce your experience to stereotypes. And I want to protect my peace, my healing, and my progress. My hope is that by telling this story, even one person might feel seen. That someone might finally reach out for help or stop blaming themselves for what they're going through. If this helps even one person feel less alone, then opening up about it was absolutely worth it.